So welcome to our 30-minute webinar today with Nina Decca, our senior research analyst who brings nearly 2 decades of healthcare industry and investment research experience to the ROBO Global Research Team. And my name is Erin Shepard. I'm the head of global marketing, and I will be helping moderate this conversation today. So today we're going to be diving into Nina's latest research around how healthcare innovation is revolutionizing cancer detection. You all should have received the white paper immediately following the registration to this call today. If you didn't, I've posted the link in the chat, so you can access it there, or you can email us at insights@roboglobal.com, and we will make sure that you get a copy. The goal today is to spend the first half of this call going over the latest research, and then the second half addressing any questions you might have. So you'll see in the Zoom, there's the Q&A feature. You can go ahead and ask questions throughout the time that we're talking, and when we get to the Q&A section, we'll address those questions. If there's any questions that we don't get to today, we'll make sure to follow up with you individually throughout the week. So for those who don't know, our Healthcare Technology and Innovation Index, which is ticker HTEC or HTEC, spans a broad array of healthcare innovation, which you can see here on this slide. Today, we'll be focusing in on just one of these areas, genomics. We could probably spend an entire day diving deep into the genomics subsector, but today we're specifically going to focus on the world of genetic cancer testing. So Nina, you just published a white paper on this. Why did you choose this topic, and why was it so relevant right now?
Thanks, Erin. So the reason why we went with this particular sub-theme within genomics is because there's a lot of exciting things happening in this field right now. And there's been so much attention on the pandemic this year that we want to make sure that investors are aware of all of the great innovation that's happening maybe behind the scenes that's getting less exposure, just to make sure that investors don't miss out on some great investment opportunities. The traditional ways of testing for cancer are being disrupted and through the advancements of genomics. For example, liquid biopsy is one of the hottest fields in genomics right now. And it offers at least a $30 billion TAM, a total addressable market. And if you were to attach only a 3x multiple to that, this could mean over $100 billion of new market cap opportunity. So there's a lot of great investment opportunity. We're still in very early days, and that's why we wrote this white paper, to just make sure that investors are aware.
So I think it's fair to assume that, like me, most of the people on the call are not spending every day in a laboratory. So can you kind of explain more around what liquid biopsy is and why it's getting so much traction right now?
Sure. Just to put it very simply, imagine there is a tumor, as we can see in this diagram here. The tumor sheds cells, protein, DNA, into the cancer patient's bloodstream. And you can extract pieces of this for analysis just through simply doing a blood draw. And so this offers a wide range of potential benefits, but the fact that you don't have to go in and surgically remove a part of the tumor is a big game changer.
I don't think you can have a webinar in 2020 without talking about how the pandemic has affected something in the investment world. So can you kind of talk about how the pandemic has actually further highlighted the value proposition for liquid biopsies?
Sure. So as I mentioned, you can collect a liquid biopsy with a simple blood draw, which can really be done anywhere, including the patient's own home. And that's important because if you think about what it takes to collect a tumor biopsy, a patient has to go in to see an oncologist, have something surgically removed. And so if you think about the risks associated with that type of procedure, a lot of people have been staying away from that type of examination during the pandemic because they just don't want to have continued risk. And when you think about cancer patients, they're already immunocompromised. So if you can minimize the number of times that they have to actually physically go and have something done, particularly a surgical procedure and the risks that come along with that, then so there are a lot of benefits to that. Also, interestingly, for liquid biopsy, as you can see in this slide, it offers the opportunity to do a lot more than the traditional method of tissue biopsy. So if you think about uh, early screening to see if somebody even has a cancer gene. If you think about early detection, so before the patient even knows that they have a tumor, maybe you can detect the cancer. And then in order to diagnose and there already is a tumor, sure, the tissue biopsy makes a lot of sense in that circumstance. But what about after the patient's already undergone treatment? You might want to conduct liquid biopsy exams to monitor. Did the cancer stay away? Is treatment working? So there's just a lot more doors that open up when we talk about liquid biopsy that can be used throughout the patient's cancer journey, not just to inspect a tumor. And so what that does is it opens up, as I mentioned before, a wide opportunity for growth because you can do you can do liquid biopsies much more frequently. To give you an example, a patient who has undergone cancer treatment, they have to have a 5-year wait and watch process to see whether or not the cancer has stayed away. And the screening protocol is an annual mammogram. But with liquid biopsy, you could go in every 3 months and see if the cancer has stayed away. So this gives the patient more peace of mind. It adds frequency to the level of information and ability to check in. And so it improves the overall care and it helps you spot things quicker. For example, a company in the HTEC index called Natera the ticker is NTRA. They are a world market leader in prenatal testing, NIPT, NIPT. And so what this does is it lets people have a blood draw to see whether or not, if they're pregnant, to see whether or not there might be chromosomal abnormalities, for example, with the fetus. And the alternative to this is an invasive procedure called amniocentesis, where a needle actually goes into the abdomen to extract part of the amniotic fluid to otherwise conduct the screening. And so Natera has taken their robust technology and an ability to do this through drawing blood from the mom rather than extracting fluid from the amniotic fluid. And they've applied that technology to cancer screening in a way that they can monitor. So let's say a patient has undergone treatment for colorectal cancer. Then after, they can monitor the patient using Natera's Signatera product. It's newly approved, and it can actually detect whether or not the colorectal cancer has returned up to almost 9 months sooner than the traditional method of screening. And we already know with colorectal cancer that it does recur at least in 7% of the patients, if not up to 42% of the patients. And by the time it is realized that the cancer has come back, 80% of the time, it's too late for the patient to intervene. So if you can get a earlier detection of a recurrence up to 9 months sooner, this means that this technology can actually be used to improve the quality of life and save lives. So it's really exciting. And Natera is also getting involved in other areas besides colorectal cancer, like lung and breast. And they also have a partnership with another company called Foundation Medicine.
So the traditional is tissue, and we've been talking about liquid biopsy. Is liquid biopsy then going to be replacing the tissue market?
Not necessarily, and actually I would say not at all. There is still going to be a strong use case for tissue. At the end of the day, if you biopsy a tissue, you're getting a more comprehensive view of the DNA of the cancer. And so, whereas with liquid biopsy, you're getting cells that have shed from the tumor that are circulating. They call it circulating tumor cell DNA that's floating around in the blood. So with liquid biopsy, you detect it and then amplify it for analysis. Whereas with tissue biopsy, it's taken directly from the source, and then you can analyze it in a more comprehensive fashion. So it's not going to go away. And also, if investors are curious, like how do they invest? What's the best way to position themselves? I would recommend buy both. You want to be able to be invested in areas that are covering both bases, the growth opportunity within liquid biopsy as well as with the tissue market. For example, Roche is a company, another company in the HTEC index. I mentioned earlier Foundation Medicine. This is a wholly owned subsidiary of Roche, and the U.S. market leader in tissue biopsy testing. And so Foundation Medicine is now investing heavily into expanding further into liquid biopsy. So this is actually a slide that we borrowed from the company, but as you can see here in the orange, when we talk about the patient's journey throughout cancer, there's, well, we start with all the way to the left, there's detection of early cancer that you can just detect through blood. And then when you actually want to analyze the tumor itself, when the patient's, let's say, in an earlier stage of cancer, you could do a tissue biopsy. Tissue biopsy is also appropriate later for staging biomarker detection in a late stage example. But then if you look at the gray shaded area in between the orange, these are all the other areas where liquid biopsy is appropriate. So if you think about a company, why wouldn't they want to be comprehensive and offer the full spectrum throughout the patient's cancer journey? And what this does is it helps the oncologist, it helps the patient because all of their genetic data and sampling is in one place. And that also helps further the analytics capability. If you look at the bottom part of this slide, you can see where Foundation Medicine has already made advances in both liquid and tissue for late stage disease, but they're investing very heavily into further growth into detecting cancer in these earlier stages. So this is what Foundation Medicine's pipeline will look like in the future. They plan to get much more robust testing capabilities in early stage and offer that comprehensive point of view. Another really interesting thing about Foundation Medicine is that they, through other partnerships, are able to make their capabilities even more comprehensive. For example, they have a partnership with Flatiron. This is electronic health record and data analytics market leader specifically focused on cancer. So what you have with the electronic health record is real world patient data. And then what you have through Foundation Medicine and with their backing from Roche is a very robust analytics capability of the genetic data. And when you marry those two together, you can start to see, are there other things going on in the patient's day-to-day, in their actual, any type of electronic health record data that might indicate that they are at further risk or that might help minimize future risk of recurrence. And you can do that when all the data is together in one place. And not everybody has access to such a robust library through which they can do this extensive analysis. So really some cool things happening with Foundation Medicine. They have another partnership with Illumina, world market leader and pioneer of next generation sequencing testing and platforms. And what this will help do is enable better distribution so that they can get to all the pockets and corners of the world and help offer this type of testing to labs who simply have a Illumina sequencer and want to use Foundation Medicine's testing capabilities. So a lot of partnerships. They have partnerships with dozens of biopharmaceutical companies, which they're working on to make companion diagnostics. This is another really interesting area where when you analyze the DNA of the cancer, you can then create a therapy to treat the cancer that's just made for that DNA. And when you have that extra level of specificity, it's more targeted. This is the birth of the world of precision medicine. And you can only have the therapy that's targeted if you have a diagnostic test that can detect the DNA of the cancer. And this is today, this is not future, this is happening now. But there's a huge growth opportunity for it because it's not very widely adopted yet. And one of the ways to advance that is through comprehensive genetic profiling. When you analyze the tissue of a biopsy, when you analyze the blood sample of a liquid biopsy, why look for one gene when you could look for a panel of them and just check all your cases to see whether or not the patient's, whether or not the cancer possesses any of the different DNAs that are known. So, so there's a huge growth opportunity in both tissue and liquid to migrate from single gene testing to comprehensive genetic profiling. And I mean, like I mentioned, over 30 billion addressable market for liquid biopsy, and at least 10 to 15 billion in addressable market for tissue as you migrate toward comprehensive genetic profiling. So a lot going on with Foundation Medicine. To give you another example of an innovative company, Invitae, also going all in offering that whole spectrum of cancer testing. So Invitae is another market leader of prenatal testing. They've been doing liquid biopsy for a while. They just announced the acquisition of Archer DX, which they expect to close later this year. And with that acquisition, it's going to bring them tissue biopsy testing. So Invitae is also gearing up to be the one-stop shop. And there is plenty of market for both of them. Today, the vast majority of patients who have lung cancer, for example, are not being screened for all the known genes that they could be, for which there might be potential treatment for. One of the reasons for that is there's a big barrier. This is a Luminous chart. I mentioned them earlier. Here's Invitae. I'm talking about them now. One of the barriers to this wide ability to test lots of people and screen and early detection is that the majority of testing today takes place in the university medical center setting. And not everyone in the world lives near a big city where there's a big university medical center. So, so through the acquisition of Archer, or like with Foundation Medicine, through their partnership with the parent company Roche and Roche Diagnostics, as well as Illumina and these big partnerships, they're hoping to expand the reach to get testing to all the far corners of the earth so that people who might have cancer or who have cancer can have access to the same high level of technology. So we're in early days. There's tons of room to grow here, and it's a really exciting time for genetic testing.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a lot of partnerships and kind of crossover instances where genomics companies are working with companies who are outside of what we consider a traditional genomics sector, like the Foundation Medicine and Flatiron examples. So if we take a view from above, how do you see genomics fitting in with other innovative areas in healthcare specifically?
Sure. So actually, we had a great little graphic that we had up earlier. This is the HTEC universe. This is how we look at the most innovative areas in healthcare today and over the next 5-10 years, where we're going to see transformation. Like we're not going to recognize cancer testing 10 years from now the same way today we didn't recognize cancer tests. They wouldn't have guessed. Like things that were approved for cancer testing 10 years ago would not be allowed today because they weren't specific enough, et cetera. So these are all the areas where we're seeing transformation: diagnostics, data analytics, genomics. When I mentioned earlier, and to your point about the partnerships, these companies aren't able to get to where we want to be 10 years from now on their own, unless they're doing M&A or building out their own capabilities. Take Roche, for example. So with Foundation Medicine and with Flatiron, you've got the marriage of the genomics, and then you've got the data analytics capability. With all their partnerships with biopharmaceutical companies, you've got this, the creation of precision medicine happening. And so if you were to only say I only want to invest in genomics, you might be missing out on a broader investment opportunity because where one subsector benefits, many others may as well. And it kind of takes the partnerships and the M&A to drive a lot of this forward. Take telehealth, for example. This is very quickly migrating toward a huge untapped world of virtual care. In the next 5 to 10 years, virtual care is going to underlie every facet of healthcare. It's going to enable better communication and coordination for the patient, for doctors who all have the same patient to talk to one another and make sure that they're not prescribing the same medicines, or that they're not missing some detail. It's going to enable we already seeing the growth of doctor to patient, which is coming from telehealth capabilities. We're going to start to see device to doctor and device to patient communication and device to device. There is so much untapped market there. It's about 154 billion market opportunity for the world of virtual care. And when we start to see more adoption of that, we're going to get to reach the people in the far corners of the earth to analyze their DNA and have early cancer detection, and then create the therapies that are going to help treat them and save lives. And so all of this kind of goes together. And so what we say is, if you do want to invest in the future of healthcare, you're going to want this diversified portfolio.
Great. And then just very briefly, can you give everyone on the call a behind the scenes look in how we construct the HTEC index here at ROBO Global?
Sure. So we have a team of research analysts, actually a team of like a whole investment team, where we have actually spent the last 7+ years and deeply analyzing robotics, automation, and AI. We've realized over that time all of the disruption and happening in healthcare. So we've built out a healthcare index, and we continue to use a similar methodology. We use deep fundamental analysis. We're looking for the number 1, number 2 companies around these different subsectors. And then we have an extensive committee voting process, and also a team of advisors, which is pretty unique to our firm. There's about 10 advisors, and they represent the world's world-renowned thought leaders and PhDs who are subject matter experts in the areas in which we invest. What you get as a result of only picking the number 1, number 2 companies in all these different areas is you get a much more diversified portfolio across what we consider to be the more innovative subsectors. So to give you an example, in this chart, we've got a global healthcare index in the light blue. And as you can see, it's very heavily weighed in large cap pharmaceutical. We don't have as much exposure to large cap pharmaceutical. However, we're much more focused in the areas that we think represent all that disruption I was talking about earlier, the telehealth, the data analytics, the robotics, precision medicine. And so if you look at the dark blue, we're a lot more diversified in these other areas. And then as a result, you get not a lot of overlap. So if you're already invested in healthcare, we have 20% or less overlap with other healthcare indices because of our focus in these innovative areas. You also get access to a lot more small and mid-cap companies. If you look at this market cap breakdown in the middle, you can see that we have half the index, 85 or so companies are small and mid-cap. You're not going to get exposure to that necessarily in some other healthcare investment opportunities. And then I'll also mention that we're modified equal weighted. So not one company would really skew all the risk on their performance, which is handy because when you're looking at small, mid-cap, high growth, innovative companies, there could be a lot of volatility. So what we're looking for is not the best 1 or 2 companies, but a great group of phenomenal market and technology leaders. As a result, I will point out that this is the green is our HTEC index performance over the last 12 months. We have been live now for since June of 2019. So we have over a year of performance data. And if you compare us to the purple, that's Global Healthcare Index, you can see here that yes, healthcare is outperforming the orange, which is just global equities, but healthcare innovation is further outperforming standard healthcare. And that's because of those areas I was talking about. This is indicative that there is a high investor appetite for healthcare innovation.
Great. All right. So we are going to take some questions from the audience. The first question we got was around Illumina. So they're asking, because there's so many companies that are selling COVID tests now, and there's also a lot of new companies in genomics research, do you feel like there's still growth opportunities for that particular company?
Definitely do. So I will mention that all the companies that we did mention today are in the HTEC index. And there's many more, as I mentioned, but today we're focused more in the cancer area. Illumina is, interestingly, if you look at how they make money, people buy their platforms, these sequencing platforms. And this year has been rough for a lot of companies, also in healthcare, because the budgets to buy new systems is not available. Hospitals are focused on other things right now, labs, research facilities. That being said, governments want to get ahead of this. They want to not only analyze COVID, but the pandemic has exposed us to the fact that we're not necessarily ready for tomorrow's pandemic, for the next big outbreak. And there's so much we can do outside of the outbreak, outside of public health, like with cancer, with prenatal testing, et cetera. So what we're seeing in channel checks is that a lot of these research facilities, it's not that they're not going to buy Illumina anymore, they're just waiting and they're going to buy more. So research is going to drive additional growth for Illumina. Another great area for growth is the ongoing surveillance. If we get our arms around this virus and everybody gets a vaccine, we're still going to want to maintain surveillance in different communities to see how is the DNA changing of the actual virus, because over time you're going to have to use that to modify and update the vaccines. So there's going to be ongoing need within the pandemic and then also beyond for continued use of Illumina. So we're really excited about where they stand today. They are the market leader, and it's really hard when a lab, especially a clinical lab, is already using Illumina to convince them to use another product. And they're so tied up right now with COVID testing that as they go back to the normal testing, they're gonna need to buy more sequencers and more instruments. So it's a really exciting time to be involved in diagnostics and also in Illumina.
Great. So going back to the kind of technology we were talking about, will a liquid biopsy help identify unknown tumors, or is this procedure only effective when there is a known tumor that you intend to biopsy?
So in terms of targeting therapy, for known tumors for a patient, you can do it if you don't know that you have a tumor or not. This can be used for screening. So someone might not even know that there is a tumor. They might not even know that they have cancer. And liquid biopsy is the opportunity to be able to find that. So when I mentioned earlier that there's use cases beyond tissue biopsy, this is one of them. There might not even be known that there's a tumor. So this is a huge game changer in the world of cancer.
Great. So I think that's time. We have a couple other questions, but Nina and I will get together and we'll make sure to follow up with you guys after we get off this call.
Thanks,
Thank you guys all for joining. Thank you, Nina. Super interesting.
Thank you everyone for your time today, and thanks for your interest in HTEC.